Welcome to the Atheist in Recovery podcast, where we talk about finding hope in recovery. And now your host, Dr. Adina Silvestri.
Hola, Atheists in Recovery, and welcome to episode 85 of the Atheists in Recovery podcast, where it is my job to take a deep dive into the spiritual and scientific belief systems of people in long-term recovery in order to deconstruct limiting thought patterns and introduce new behaviors they can use in order to bring about hope in recovery. But today, you're stuck with me, guys. It's a solo episode. And so today I am outlining 5 ways hypnotherapy can help you break through emotional rock bottom. And we're going to look through these 5 ways, and then hopefully you'll stay to the end and I give a bonus 6th way I believe that hypnotherapy can help you break through. And I want to start, though, before I get to the list, I want to start with a quote. Now, this quote is from Viktor Frankl. He is probably my favorite. It's probably my favorite book. If I had to pick one, I mean, there are several. I think I devour books like chocolate chip cookies, and I love chocolate chip cookies. I mean, I just go through a couple a week sometimes. And so, but he's probably still, if not my number one, maybe the top 5. And so this quote of Viktor Frankl's, I think, does a pretty good job of talking about what we're going to address today. And so the quote is, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." And when I think about that quote in the context of the podcast and what we talk about here in this space, I feel like it's so true. I mean, I think that it's hard. It's a journey to get to the other side when we're deep in addiction. But just think about, after those withdrawal symptoms go away, think about how much lighter you're going to be. Think about how much more free. Think about all the things that you had to do in order to keep the addiction going. The lying, the stealing, the guilt, the shame. Maybe there was no lying or stealing, but there definitely was guilt, and there was probably a little shame. And, just having to have like these shackles on all the time. It's sort of what I picture in my mind sometimes when I think about addiction. And so this quote from Viktor Frankl is one that I really love. And so let me know what you think about the quote. Let me know what you think about the episode. And let's get started with number 1. There is always light in the darkness. I think that when we are in the depths of despair, it's really hard to imagine that life will ever get better. There's this feeling of hopelessness. It definitely comes into my office on a weekly basis. But if you search, if you look hard enough, there's a spot somewhere inside of you. There's a place deep down inside that wants to get better. Maybe it's more of a quiet voice where all the others are pretty loud, like the anxiety or depression. But it's there. It's there. And a lot of those other feelings are just trying to protect you from feeling shame and worthlessness. And so, I'm a big fan of all feelings, but hypnotherapy can better help you understand what the feelings are trying to tell you. And it's my understanding that every emotion has a job. The good emotions, the not so good emotions, they all have jobs. And I believe that their job is to help keep the self safe, self with a capital S, safe. And so hypnotherapy will not only help you see the light in the darkness, it'll shine a spotlight on your future self. In this episode, we talk a lot about our future self. So it'll help shine that spotlight on your future self. It'll help you recognize who you are, your gifts, your talents, and remind you that you're not alone. At this moment, right here, right now, there are so many others that are struggling just like you. And it's hard to remember that when you're in the depths of despair. Which is a perfect segue to number 2. Even in your loneliest moments, you are not alone. Even when you are at your lowest and think no one is going through what you're going through, Know that there are people struggling at this exact moment, just like we just talked about. You haven't maybe crossed paths with them yet, but they're there. Hypnotherapy will help you gain greater clarity and awareness to what's right in front of you and all around you. And I know connection is the hardest when you're feeling low, but you are never alone. And sometimes all it takes is just a phone call to a friend, a phone call to a therapist, a phone call to someone you trust, and just lean into that vulnerability. If they start to share their story, think about sharing yours. Connect in that way. And then you'll realize that you never were alone in the first place. Number 3, the people who matter will be by your side. I'm a firm believer in sometimes you have to choose your family. Sometimes the family that you decide to stick by is not blood related. This comes up a lot in my practice. If I stop drinking, I will lose the people I care about. It's just not true. Yeah, maybe you'll lose some of your drinking buddies or some of the buddies that you would smoke with, but that's a good indication that they weren't going to be around for the long haul anyway. The people that truly care about you, those relationships will remain and they will most likely grow even stronger. Number 4, shame is just a feeling. It is. It's a feeling. It's a wet blanket. I mean, it's probably the only feeling that will cover up all of the other feelings. But I love that hypnotherapy can go straight to shame. It's just like, I guess it also depends on the hypnotherapist that you're using. But for me, I just, I go right to the source because that's why you're there. You're there to get to know yourself. You're there to get to know your feelings. You're there to figure out why they're coming up, where you can feel them in your body. You'll get to the root cause of the addiction. You'll get to figure out where those feelings originated. Shame has been there for a while, perhaps. Well, then looking at why you needed it as a protective mechanism when you were younger. And so hypnotherapy will help with that. You'll begin to rewire these memories. Hypnotherapy will provide a link back to earlier decisions. You'll begin to experience these memories on a very emotional level. And that could be really good if some of the trauma that you experienced was pre-verbal. And then you can start to heal. So this is probably a good time to bring in a case study. We'll call him Stefan. Stefan came to me initially because of his traumas, plural. Again, I feel like none of us escape childhood without some traumas, even if they're the little t traumas. Stefan found comfort at the bottom of a bottle from a young age, and things progressed to, hard drugs like cocaine and other things. And when his wife found him unconscious one afternoon, he knew that it was time to stop. He had gone too far. Mind you, he is a successful entrepreneur. He was very functional, but he knew that in order to live his best life, in order to be there in the future for his family and friends, he needed to change. He needed to change these behaviors. But to do that, he needed to change his identity. And his current story was filled with shame. I'm not a good husband. I'm not a good son. I'm letting down my employees. And a lot of times unworthiness, the feelings of unworthiness is also tied to shame. And so that makes it really difficult to accept any kind of kindness from self and others. And so after a few sessions, Stefan realized the trauma he suffered early on still had this incredible impact on his identity. And I believe that personality is a byproduct of identity. So he got to work by reframing his past, and he'd gotten really clear on his future self. He wanted to stop drinking. He wanted to, at least for the time being, stop using drugs. And hey, that was good enough for me. And, he wanted to give himself what these substances never could. There was a part of him that really needed to heal, needed kindness, needed self-love, needed all these things that he never gotten from his past. And so he began to create his healing story. He began to look at his past with a more positive lens, give his younger self exactly what he needed that he had never gotten growing up. And the transformation started. He became the hero of his story instead of the victim. And I think that that's another important piece that hypnotherapy can do for you. Number 5, rock bottom is an opportunity to recreate your life. I don't want anyone to get to rock bottom. Really, I don't. But sometimes that's when people reach out to me, is when they've hit emotional rock bottom, where they feel like they can't go any lower. And so that's why I decided to spend some time on this today. So you may not realize until you hit emotional rock bottom that you want your life to change, but you may gain clarity that you just never could have accessed before. And maybe that you're at the lowest of lows emotionally, but make sure that you reach out for help because it will get better. I've seen around 1,000 individuals just individually in my practice. And one thing's for certain, no one has ever died of emotional pain. Emotions need to come with a message that they are just temporary. They're all just temporary. And I think that a lot of times we're so afraid to access them. And even in my practice, I'll get people, ask me, is this really necessary? Do I really have to talk about the bad parts? Do I really have to go there? Yes, and more yes. And the painful emotions, again, are just temporary. It will get better. So please make it a priority. If you are at rock bottom emotionally, make it a priority to reach out to somebody that you trust for help. Okay, number 6 is the bonus. By changing your identity, you change your behaviors. So you can change your story, and I feel like hypnotherapy does a great job at that. Other modalities will also do this. Hypnotherapy, though, I feel like does it really quickly, like after the first session. So you can change your story of your past and your story of the future. You're going to want to do both. Who we are in the present is largely shaped by the views of our past and our view of the future. And as you've heard in several of the AIR podcasts now, your future needs to be so much greater than your past. You need to be living a life that's so much more fulfilled than your past when you were living with addiction, because then you really have nothing to look forward to. And your past should be viewed as positive. And hypnotherapy can help you do that. It can help you shape the meaning of your past. And you alone are the one that creates meaning. So you, the hypnotherapist, the script, the hypnotherapy script, all of that can make this meaning making occur. And so once these two things happen, once you start to look at your past more positively, once you start to get really clear on your future self and making sure that it's a future self that is worthy, that it's exciting to you, your identity will start to shift. And you'll realize that you're stronger and more capable than your former self. You'll live up to your future self. We all do. We all live up to our future self. So make sure that it's a good one. Make sure that the story you tell and the meaning that you give is just the best version you can think of. And that's what's going to change the behavior. That's what's going to change your routine of wanting to drink when you're triggered, or wanting to use substances, or wanting to look for those external validations, or being addicted to worry, or whatever the things are. That's what's going to change your behavior, is making sure that the meaning you give to your future self is just amazing. Because we all live up to our identities. We make sure that the behaviors that we engage in are in congruence with our identities. Okay. So I hope you enjoyed the 5 ways plus one bonus way of how hypnotherapy can help you break through emotional rock bottom. And remember, if you're not happy with yourself, make a plan to change it. This takes daily attention and practice to feel better about yourself. If you're interested in learning more, I provide hypnotherapy to individuals in Virginia at my office and worldwide via Zoom. Okay, guys, have a great one. Bye. Thank you for listening to the Atheists in Recovery podcast. For more great info and to stay up to date, head over to atheistsandrecovery.com.